everybody. Good evening. Thanks for joining us this evening. My name is Shlomo Sokal. I am a post-Aliyah and government advocacy advisor at Nefesh B'Nefesh. Tonight, we are going to be discussing the exciting topic of customs and shipping, in addition to whatever other questions you may want to discuss. Before we begin, I just want to explain how this is going to work. We're going to start. I have about a 20-minute presentation about shipping and customs. I'd ask you to please hold your questions until then. Once I've finished the presentation, I'll be happy to take questions on shipping and customs. And then after we answer all the questions on shipping and customs, I'm happy to stick around for whatever time we have left to answer any other questions that you might have. So we're going to try to cover a lot of different ground today. The topic that we're talking about is a very detailed topic. I think expecting it to be fun may be a little bit much, but hopefully we'll stumble across interesting and informative as we go through the next hour and a half together. I'm joined tonight by my colleagues Nata and Tzipi. If you have questions that you want answered during the course of the webinar, you can put your questions in the chat box and Tzipi and Nata will be answering them. If there's something that they feel they want to share with the group, a question that is important for everybody, I would ask them to please, if a question like that comes in that you want me to answer to the group, please just chime in and ask me the question and I'll be happy to discuss it. Okay, with all that being said, let's jump right into the topic of shipping. Now, I also do want to add here that we are recording this webinar, so hopefully we'll be, assuming everything works well, we will send out a copy of the presentation to everyone who's attending, so you'll have that coming to you as well. All right, so all that being said, let's dive into the topic. What we're going to discuss tonight are a couple of different things. We're going to talk how to get started, the first questions to ask, how to really think about your shipment, and how to get the process started. We'll talk about the most basic question of should you send a shipment or not. We're going to talk about the different kinds of shipments, buying appliances and what customs rights are available there, what not to ship, some information about clearing through customs, and we'll talk about some important reminders. Okay, great. In the end, we'll just we'll sum everything up. So let's dive right in. One second. I hope everyone can see my picture. I am talking to you. I hope everyone can see my video. If you can't, well, I'm sorry about that. And if you'd like to turn on your camera, that would be great as well, so we can get an idea of who we're talking to, but as you wish. Okay, let's get started. Let's dive right into the topic of conversation. So the first question we have to discuss is decide if you're even sending a lift at all. How do you make that decision? Well, the first thing you want to decide is, do you have enough things to make it worthwhile to send a lift? How are you going to determine that? Well, take a look around your... So someone just asked me if we're going to be talking about post-Aliyah issues. Like I said, we're going to start with talking about customs. The focus of this is going to be customs. And then afterwards, at the end, we'll be able to answer any other questions you have. So we will hopefully be hitting on some things besides customs. All right, decide if you are sending a lift. When we talk about that decision, we're talking about, do you have enough things to make it worthwhile sending a lift? And do you have a place in Israel where you're going to be able to fit all of the things that you're going to be sending on this lift? So remember, a lift, even with your Aliyah benefits, a lift is an expensive proposition. It costs a significant amount of money. The benefits you get as an Oleh are going to be on, on things like the customs tax, but you still have to pay for the shipment. So remember, there's a significant expense. Do you have things to ship that make the expense worthwhile? And when the things get here, are you going to have the space to actually use those items effectively? What do I mean by that? Well, let's talk about things like basic furniture, a bedroom set. You may have a bedroom set that you've had for a long time, and you want to take it, but you have to figure out, is this bedroom set going to fit in the bedroom of my Israeli apartment? Have you looked into that? Do you know where you're going to be living, what the dimensions are? Is shipping this just going to be shipping something that you can never use, in which case it's worthwhile getting rid of it before you make Aliyah, either by selling it or giving it to a family member. So if you have things, it's not a given that you're going to ship the things you have. You first need to make sure that the things that you have are actually worth shipping, which brings me to, what are you shipping? All right, so under the benefits, you are allowed to ship without paying customs tax the contents of a home. All right, the basic things that would include the contents of a family home: one washer, one dryer, one refrigerator, one oven, a couple of TVs, maybe even some carpeting, a couple of sofas. So you're allowed to ship the basic things. Again, do you own those things already, or are you going to buy them to ship? If you're going to buy them to ship, that doesn't make a lot of sense usually, because you're paying a significant amount for actually shipping the items. So you can get to a point where you have to decide, are the things that I own actually worth shipping? Choosing a shipper is the next part. And choosing a shipper is very fraught. I wish that I could tell you who to use as a shipper. Unfortunately, I cannot. So you need to do research when you're choosing your shipper. As a matter of fact, a lot of this webinar is going to be about arming you to deal with the process, to deal with the experts that you are going to have to hire along the way of this process. You can't really ship without a shipper effectively. All right. So how are you going to choose your shipper? What kinds of questions are you going to ask them? Well, you're going to start by finding out, what is the price? So one question that people ask me very often is, what is the price of sending a shipment? And the answer is, well, it depends on what you're shipping. It depends on where you're shipping from. It depends on the time of year you're shipping. And it depends on the X factor, which is, what is the weather like? How many containers are there available? There's so many of these variables that no one can really tell you what a lift will cost. So when you go to a shipper, the first thing you're going to be looking for is to get an estimate from them. How much should your shipment cost for the time frame that you want to ship it? All right, so you need to get an estimate, and you need to get a couple of estimates. And that's how you're going to be able to figure out, okay, if one person is giving me an estimate that is half the price of the other, well, why is that? What's missing here? Okay, and then you need to protect yourself by asking that question. So the estimate is the first place to go. The second thing is expertise. And this is where you have those questions where you need to be able to be an informed consumer. So for example, if you're speaking to a shipper, well, you want to ask things like, okay, who's handling the clearance? Who's handling the transport? All right, if you're going to come pack my things, and unpack my things in Israel, is it the same people? Is your company in Israel or is it in America? Why does that make a difference? Well, you are shipping to Israel. The major difference in handling and the way that things are managed in the port is going to be by the port where customs are being cleared, the Israeli side of things. If you have someone who's based in Israel, then you know that their expertise is dealing with the Israeli clearance side of things. If you're hiring someone who's based in America and they're using a subcontractor on the Israeli side of things, you don't really know exactly who you're hiring. So it's very important that you make sure that you are asking the right questions and that you're informing yourself. We're going to try to get a little bit more into that in this webinar. We'll go into some more details to give you an idea of asking questions, but getting an idea of who your shipper is and how much they know is a very important thing. Reputation is very important. This is where your own private research has to come into play. You need to be able to go on the various Facebook groups and crowdsource who people are using, what their experiences have been using shippers, and get an idea for yourself, for your own satisfaction of how this shipper is doing. A good way to do this is, first of all, go on the shippers' websites and look for what trade organizations they belong to. There are a couple of different international shipping trade organizations, and if your shipper you're looking for doesn't belong to any of them, that could be a sign of a problem. You also want to look at what information does the shipper have on their website. So, for example, if you go to a shipper, on their website, they have many different videos about shipping for Aliyah. You can watch those videos and you can see what the shippers are. You can hear from the shippers themselves how educated they sound on their own, on what they need, and also about, how comfortable you feel with their expertise. So it's very important to do that research, to go to these companies' websites and see what they say about Aliyah, all right? And listen to what they're saying and what their expertise is. So remember, you're entrusting all the belongings of your life to someone to ship over an ocean. You want to make sure that you feel comfortable with the person that you're hiring to do that. Okay, let's move on. Okay. All right. It's very important to research what you're sending and whether or not it's going to be able to be used or fit in your new situation in Israel. What does that mean? Well, it has a couple of different meanings. Space is the obvious factor. If you're in Israel now, living in your apartment in Israel, I'm sure you've noticed that you have just less physical space than you had in America. It doesn't matter if you were living in an apartment and you're living in an apartment now, or you were living in a house and you're living in a house now. You'll have noticed that rooms tend to be smaller, all right? And what you're used to may no longer fit in your current living situation. To give you an idea of what I'm talking about, when I made Aliyah, I brought over a washing machine, a dryer, a refrigerator, and an oven. I had GE and Whirlpool appliances. They were all made for the European market, so they all had the correct voltage. Got a great deal on them, put them in my lift, wonderful. My first acknowledgement that something might be wrong was the fact that in my laundry room in my new apartment, I couldn't fit my washing machine and dryer into it without removing the sink and the door from the laundry room. All right, fine, whatever, it's worth it to have the big one. Then I noticed that I couldn't fit my stove into my kitchen, and I had to have my stove where my refrigerator should have been, and my refrigerator was in my living room. Now, was that a terrible thing? No. Am I happy that I have a full-sized stove and I can cook a turkey on Thanksgiving if I want to? Yes. I had 3 kids at the time. It was important for me to have a full-size washer and dryer. So it's depends. You have to understand that you're going to be making trade-offs in everything, and what is it that works for you? all right? I can't tell you what's going to be right for you. I can tell you what worked for me, but even the things that worked for me didn't always work. You have to know what you're getting into, make the decision, and then be happy with the decision. Don't think about what you could. No, you make a decision, but you have to go into it, make the decision intelligently. Will my appliances work in Israel? Will they fit into the space I have? If I need to make adjustments, can I live with those adjustments? Same thing goes with furniture. People ask me a lot about, could I run appliances off of transformers? Can I use US voltage appliances in Israel? The answer is, I wouldn't risk it for most things because every transformer will eventually blow, usually taking the appliance with it. And the better the transformer, in other words, the longer that your transformer can last without blowing itself and the appliance, the more expensive the transformer is going to be, up until the point where it's even can be more expensive than the actual appliance. So I would tend to advise to get appliances, certainly major appliances, that do not have to be run off of a transformer. Okay, appliances, furniture, measurements, all about research and understanding what you're getting into. Factors that influence relative cost of cubic foot of a shipment. This is where we get into the idea of what kinds of shipments there are and how that affects your planning as well as your costs. There are two types of shipments that we're talking about. One is called an FCL, which stands for a full container load. And the other one is called an LCL, which stands for, believe it or not, a less than full container load. Basically, what those two mean is in one, you're buying the whole container. In the other, you are buying a portion of a container. You're buying space on a container. They both have positives and negatives, both in cost and in convenience. But ultimately, it comes down to what do you have and can you fill a full container? A full container load will be the cheapest on a per cubic foot basis. The reason for that is if you're using an LCL, they have to not just pack your things in boxes, they then have to pack all your boxes into more boxes to separate them from the other people's boxes in the container. So it takes up more space for the same amount of items. So you're paying more on a cubic foot, on a per cubic foot basis. By the same token, if you're using a full container load, you don't have to worry about anyone else. What does that mean? That means that when you're ready for the container to be sent, the container can be sent. Whereas if you're doing a less than full container load, you have to wait for everyone who's involved in the container to be ready for it to send. The same thing can happen on the unpacking side of things. You have to wait for everything to clear customs before your shipment can be ready to be unpacked at the port. So an LCL has significant disadvantages, but the advantage is that if you don't have enough stuff to fill a full container, then you're going to be ending up paying a lot for empty space. So no one wants to do that. So you have to think about exactly what those options are. Timing your shipment. When do you want your shipment to get here? Obviously, most of you are in the post-Aliyah phase, so when you want your shipment to get here is now or as soon as possible in most cases, unless you're not yet into your where you're going to be for the long term. So like if you're staying at a temporary residence, obviously you don't want your shipment to arrive yet, because the longer it stays in the port here, the longer you're going to have to end up paying storage fees. And you want to try to avoid that. Shipping insurance. I don't really have much to say about shipping insurance, except that you should have shipping insurance. Some of the videos that I've watched from shippers have discussed how, have included videos of what it looks like for the container ship on the open sea, to give people an idea of why insurance is so important. But just remember, you're sending all your belongings on what is ultimately a very large boat in the middle of a much, much larger ocean. Things happen. Insurance is very important. Packing list. You must have a list of all the things that you are packing into your shipment. It's a manifest. You're going to need it for the insurance, but you're also going to need it for the customs. So make sure that you have a packing list. It's also important to make sure that you have your packing list not packed up in your boxes. Otherwise, when it comes time to unpack, you're going to find yourself searching desperately through the boxes for the packing list of what's in the boxes, and that doesn't do anyone any good. I just saw a question come over here about, I thought this was post-Aliyah. I will tell you, this is a post-Aliyah discussion when we talk about customs, because many people have not yet sent their shipment by the time they make Aliyah. They're waiting till they get here. So that's the reason why we're doing this as a post-Aliyah webinar. I hope no one is too disappointed by that. Okay.
Shlomo,
Yeah.
I just want to add one more thing. Some people are typing in some of the tips that they have from, I guess, when they send shipments, so everybody can keep their eyes on the chat. And as far as the questions some questions have come in, if you don't answer them by the end, I will circle back to them so that you can answer them.
Perfect. Thank you very much, Sibi. Okay, so let's get into some more details. Should I send the lift? Well, you have a benefit to send 3 shipments within 3 years without paying customs tax. So that is a big benefit, but it's only a benefit if you need it. Don't send a shipment just because you have the benefits. You have the benefit to make it easier for you to send the shipment. Don't get confused about which one's the horse and which one's the cart. So don't get confused about that. Make sure that you understand that sending a lift is not mandatory. But you have 3 years to use it with the benefits if you are going to send one. Budget, how much does it cost? Again, remember, when we're talking about sending a shipment, we are talking about 2 things. We're talking about sentimentality, and we're talking about money. The sentimentality is a big part of it. You want things that make you happy. You want things that make you comfortable. You want things that are the definition of the difference between a house and a home. So shipping those kinds of things, well, you can by getting estimates, you can put a monetary value on how much that is going to mean to you and whether or not it's worth it. So it's not just about the ease. It's not just about the things that, can you get them here? And is it more cost efficient to ship rather than buy here? Those are all great questions, but those are all ultimately very easy questions. You can go to the IKEA Israel website and you can see how much it costs to buy it here and then how much it costs to buy it there and ship it. It's an easy calculation to make. There are some things where the calculation isn't quite that simple. And that's where the things have great meaning to you, great personal sentimental value, and that's where you have to make some of the hard decisions about, is it worth that money to you? Doing due diligence, space considerations. These are all the kinds of things that we discussed about making sure that you do the research about, your space considerations. Is it worth shipping these things? What kind of space are you going to have, or are you just wasting your money shipping things that you're then going to have to put in storage? Okay. Stage of one's life. Now, this is something that people very rarely consider, but think about it this way. When I made Aliyah with a family, my wife and 3 kids. For us, again, having a big dishwasher, a big American dishwasher, washing machine and dryer was very important. We had 3 small kids. We were going to be doing a lot of laundry. When my parents made Aliyah, they were in their 70s without any kids. Well, it was just laundry for 1 or 2 of them at a time. They could get a single machine that did both the washing and the drying, and for very small loads, it takes a long time, and it wasn't that big a deal because they weren't doing that amount of laundry. Obviously, that is an example of how stage of life can really impact whether or not it was worth it to send those specific appliances. There are other things that are also involved with that. Are you a young student who's going to be having roommates? Well, you know what? Sending a shipment, probably not that big a deal for you right now, because where are you going to put stuff anyway? Where you are, not just age, but also where you are in your life as far as where you're going to be living, who you're going to be living with, the kind of space you're going to have. These are all considerations for whether or not you're going to ship something. Guarantees for appliances and selection. If you're going to be shipping appliances, make sure that you're going to buy extended warranties, or you're going to get warranties, make sure you understand how those warranties are going to be impacted by having the appliance in Israel. An example, my washing machine broke at some point, and I had it under warranty, and they were great. They sent a repairman, no problem. But at one point, they needed a part, and they would not ship the part because it was very expensive. So I had to wait till I had someone coming to Israel who could bring the part in their bag in order to get my washing machine fixed. Okay? This is a consideration when you're looking to ship an appliance. You know, it's great to have that American machine, but is it worth the hassle that it may be to fix the machine? Customs discounts on Israeli furniture. There are no customs discounts on Israeli furniture. It's important to understand that there are no customs discounts involved for Olim officially when buying things in Israel. All right? You may hear about customs discount or custom benefit when buying appliances in Israel, but that only affects major appliances made in Israel. Currently, there are no major appliances made in Israel. At one point, there were air conditioners, but that really stopped happening. So there are no customs discounts on things that you're buying in Israel. It's always a good idea when shopping as a new Oleh to tell the salesperson that you're a new Oleh and ask them for a discount, but there's no official discount available. That can also impact, whether or not it's worthwhile financially to send a shipment. All right, lift versus container. We talked quite a bit about this before, but I just want to make sure that I explain. There are different kinds of containers. These are shipping containers. There's 20-foot containers. There's 40-foot containers. There's 40-foot high containers. These are all different sizes. Again, you want to be able to fill the smallest container possible. All right? Like I said, you're paying by the cubic foot of the container, or how much space you're using in the container. The best thing is to be able to fill one container, but you want to be able to fill the smallest container that you can. A lift, the difference between a lift and a container is you own the whole container. The lift is where you have space in a container. Okay. Containers must be cleared and delivered within 4 days of arrival in Israel. After that time, container rental and port storage fees add up at a rate of $25 a day for rental of the container and port fees. You actually get more time if you're sharing a container. There's an understanding that it's going to take more time for it to be cleared. You may get an extra week or two if you own part of a container, but just understand that once the container arrives, if it's not cleared and gotten out of the port relatively quickly, you have to pay for that. Okay? So it's important to understand that so that you don't send a lift too early or before you're ready to. And that's a conversation you have to have with your shipper to try to estimate how long it's going to take the container to get here. Factors that influence the cost, where you're shipping it from. So, for example, if you live in Chicago, there's no major international. Well, Chicago is a bad example. Let's not do Chicago. Denver. Let's say you live in Denver. There's no major international port in Denver. So they would have to take your container either by truck or by rail to either Los Angeles or more likely New York or one of the major ports, and then ship it to Israel. That's going to cost more. All right. Again, and now if you're consolidating, sending something to Israel, and again, you're from Denver, the chances of you being able to find enough people to consolidate a single container to Israel is much less than if you're if you're doing it from New York. It's just simple math. There's more people making Aliyah or sending things to Israel from New York than there are from Denver. Okay, so those can be factors that will influence the cost. How much the container you fill, we already discussed that. How much packing there is to be done. This gets me into the difference between, or rather not the difference, it's stated out as simple fact. When you're going through using an international shipper, you are not packing your own stuff. They are coming to your house and they are literally putting things into boxes and packing it. They're doing this because of insurance purposes. If they pack it, they're taking responsibility that it's packed correctly. What does this mean? It means that the day that they come to pack, they're packing everything in your home. That means, like me, when you open up your shipment, you may have a full bag of garbage in the shipment because your trash bag was full in your garbage and they packed it because they were coming in to pack everything in the house. They don't make those kinds of distinctions. Okay, so whatever it is that you're shipping, make sure that only what you're shipping is there the day they come to pack, and they are going to pack it themselves. There is a possibility to do something called PBO, which is packed by owner. If you do that, you're going to have a very big problem with insurance. All right, they're probably not going to insure you fully for breakage if it's packed by owner. So again, they're going to come pack, they're going to provide the packing materials, they're going to charge you for the packing materials that they use. It's all part of the cost and the estimate you're getting from the shipper. As a matter of fact, one of the questions you're asking when you get the estimate is, well, does that include packing and materials? Does that include clearing it from door to door? All right. So all of those things are part of what you're talking about. All right, purchasing. Let's talk about what things are worth buying to ship. Again, I'm going to be very clear about this. It's not worth buying to ship if you're not going to send a shipment. All right, everything costs money. But if you're going to ship, you don't ship junk. You ship stuff that you either can't get here in Israel or is much more expensive to get here in Israel. Big American appliances. They're much harder to come by here in Israel, and if you could find them, they tend to be very expensive. So shipping, if that's what you want, shipping can be a very good idea. Fancy appliances, even if they're not large, high-end stuff, you're going to find is usually very expensive here. And if you're using your Aliyah benefit, you can avoid a huge part of the cost by avoiding those customs taxes. Electronics. I'm not such a big fan of sending big electronics here. You can buy a plasma TV here, very easily. Most what I would call consumer electronics, you can get here without too much difficulty. So I'm not sure that it's worthwhile buying them. I think probably an iPad or an iPhone, they may be worth buying in America to avoid those issues. But in general, consumer electronics can be bought here relatively easily, and there are brands here that do make what I would call small consumer electronics. So it's not as big a deal. Okay. What not to ship? Well, bad furniture, or old furniture, or furniture that you're not sure is going to withstand the journey. If you have an IKEA bookcase, don't ship it. It's not going to last. It's going to take up too much space. If you have an unopened, flat-packed IKEA bookcase, then by all means pack it. But don't pack junk. Pack good stuff. Pack stuff that is going to be almost prohibitively expensive to replace. I'll give you a couple of examples. When I made Aliyah, I had an antique armoire, an antique brake front that my grandmother had given. I was not leaving that. That was coming with me to Israel no matter what. So that was something to do. But again, IKEA bookcases didn't make it. National Wholesale Liquidators kitchen table didn't make it. You want to make sure that you're shipping stuff that is either irreplaceable or that is prohibitively expensive to replace. We already talked about custom discounts on Israeli furniture. Don't ship junk. And we're going to talk about cars in a moment. So I'm not even going to mention cars just yet, other than to pique everyone's curiosity and keep you all in suspense for when I do talk about cars. All right, customs clearing. What are you going to need to clear things through customs? Your Tudat Oleh, a photocopy of your Aliyah visa, your passports, the list of contents of what you're shipping, housing contract. There are certain things in the shipment that can be dependent upon the meterage of the home. For example, if you're shipping carpeting, the meterage of your home is a factor that they're going to look at to determine if it's all eligible under the Aliyah benefit. So a housing contract that has the meterage of the home can be helpful in some cases. If you're a returning resident, the passport step from custom, I really don't want to talk about returning residents right now, except that it's basically the same as what we're talking about here. And customs inspection. Now, I would advise all of you, everyone, to, when you're sending a shipment, that you want door-to-door service. You do not want to be worried about having to get things cleared at customs. You are in no way qualified to do that, and unless you are. And if you are, I apologize, but I'm assuming that most of you on this webinar are not customs agents yourself. So you don't know what you're doing when you're getting something cleared through customs. So I would encourage everyone to use door-to-door. That way you don't have to worry about what happens at the port. You just need to worry about what happens when it gets to your house. So that's a big thing as well. Second, sorry.
Shlomo?
Yes.
There is one question that maybe is relevant now. Is the shipment cost determined by both volume and weight?
Okay, if you are shipping by boat, okay, which means that you're shipping on a container ship, then the shipment is by volume. If you are shipping by air, all right, which most times if you're shipping just a package, you're shipping by air, that is by weight, okay? So that is really going to depend. So when you're speaking to the shipper, if you're sending a lift, that is almost always going to be by volume. If you're sending a package, that is almost always going to be by weight. I hope that's clear. Okay. Let's talk about importing a car. This is a real email that I got about 2 days ago. I want to read it to you because I'm sure a lot of you are having the same things, the same questions in your head. And I want to make sure that you understand the answer to these questions. And then I'll talk to you about why I generally tell people not to ship a car. So this is the email. How do you find out if your car, sorry, someone else had asked me on behalf of someone else. So the pronouns may be incorrect. How do you find out if your car is allowed to be imported and if you can provide repair services? I don't have a car importer. It's a 2015 Kia. How do you find out the value of the car based upon the global market? Do they use the depreciation chart and base the figure on the amount they paid for the car? And then that person had included the link to our own article on our website, which I thought was nice because that showed me that the person had read the article and knew what they were talking about. So the question was an informed question. And I would encourage everyone to read the article that we have on our website. So why did I highlight these two things? I highlighted these because I want to highlight some of the issues involved with shipping a car and some of the questions you need to ask. So first of all, you'll notice that in this email, they said they don't have a car importer. My first question back to them was, if you don't have a car importer, how are you importing a car? Your first step is to actually find a car importer. because the car importer is going to help you figure out things like, oh, can I import this car? What kind of adjustments do I need to make to the car in order to import the car? How can I get assurance that this car can be serviced in Israel? These are all things that you need to provide to customs before getting the car released. So your car importer is the person who's going to help you get the information for your car, right? So a car importer is a key part of the process. How do you find, so that's the first part. How do you find out the value of your car? Well, this is the 50,000 shekel question. The answer to that is, well, we have to take a step back. Most people, when I talk to them about shipping a car, say, oh, don't I get to ship a car tax-free? And the answer to that is a resounding no, you do not. All right? No one ships a car tax-free. As an Ole, you get a discount on the customs tax. Normally, an Israeli pays 112% tax when importing or buying a new car. An Ole pays 77% tax instead of 112%. It's still significant. It's a little bit less, but it is still significant. 77% of what, you're now asking yourself. And that's where no one can give you an official answer. And that's one of the major problems with importing a car. You can have a voucher saying, or a receipt showing what you paid for the car. You can have the depreciation figures all set up. You can even go on the Levi Yitzchak book, which is the Israeli Kelly Blue Book, and find out what the value of your car is in Israel. And then when the car arrives at the port, customs says, no, we're bringing in our own evaluator, and it's $5,000 more than you thought. Well, that's what it's going to be. And no one can tell you that it's not going to be. You can appeal if you feel it's unreasonable, but ultimately customs has the right to evaluate the car for what they think the car should be evaluated for. And no one can tell you beforehand what it's going to cost you to import your car. That, to me, is the primary problem with importing a car. Is it worth doing? Sometimes. It's worth doing if the car you want cannot be found in Israel on the secondhand market. So I'll give you an example. About 3 or 4 years ago, the Toyota Sienna and Honda Odyssey were introduced to the Israeli car market. And what happened was there was no secondhand market to buy those cars. So anyone who wanted something like that either had to spend a lot of money to buy it new here in Israel, or they could ship their used one to Israel, and that often worked. But if you had a 2010 Toyota Corolla, well, you know what? Probably not worth shipping it. Probably better off selling it in America and buying a car here in Israel. Okay? All that being said, there's an article on our website that goes through step-by-step exactly what you need to do if you want to import a car. If you're considering importing a car and you read that article, please send us an email to answers@nbn.org.il. Call us at *3680. Ask for me. I'll talk to you about it. And 9 times out of 10, after that conversation, you will no longer want to ship a car. But for that 1 out of 10, it can be worthwhile. Okay, so it's the kind of thing where we have to discuss it individually because your specific case will determine whether or not it's worthwhile to ship a car. Okay? All right. That is the end of my spiel. Sippy, are there any questions that you want me to address to the group on customs? And then we're going to go to general post-Aliyah questions.
Yeah, so somebody asked a question about sending a collection, like a mineral collection, which I thought should be not specifically the mineral collection, but any type of collection of things that might be very expensive or impossible to price or any of these.
So whenever we're talking about things with a high monetary value, let's talk about things like gold or art okay, you should be in contact with customs directly to determine whether it's going to be considered as a good, that as a household good that falls under the exemption, or as a currency that does not. So, for example, if you have gold bullion, that's probably not going to fall under the Aliyah customs exemption. However, if you have a Picasso that you hang in your living room, it may. So it's important to speak to customs about that to find out in your specific case if you have something that has a significant monetary value, whether or not you're going to have a problem. A mineral collection, I could see it happening. I could see it being considered both ways, depending on what the minerals are. If your minerals collection is a bunch of, diamonds, then we got a different story. Okay? Do you understand the difference? I hope that's clear about the difference between something that has a high intrinsic value versus something that is what you would call maybe a home decoration. Okay?
Yeah, Shlomo. So there's two more questions. One I'm going to answer quickly, and the other one I'll let you answer. Somebody's asking, asked ahead of time, do I get any discounts for using a storage facility after my container comes in? I'm letting you answer. That was the answer. Okay. Yeah. And the other.
What I would tell you is one of the questions that you're going to speak to your shipper about is what are your storage facilities? How much are you going to charge me for storage facilities? Again, a shipper who says, oh, we don't have any storage facilities. Well, if that's important to you, maybe not such a good idea to use that as a shipper. Again, it's one of the considerations when talking to the shipper is what are your contingencies for this issue, and that's how you'll be able to get that. I'm going to ask Nata, can you just give us the email for the Customs Authority? Put that up there. I think it's YIM.
Yes, I'm going to put it in the chat.
Okay, thank you. So Nata's going to put in the chat the email address to be in contact with Customs if there's anything that you're not sure about. If there's anything that seems to fall outside of the regular things. On our website, we do have a shipping guide, which does talk more about things that are covered under the benefit versus things that are not covered under the benefit. But yeah, so I would look there first. And if it's not clear, you can call us, but ultimately it's going to be up to Customs, and you're going to need the Customs confirmation regardless of what I say to you. Okay. Yeah, go ahead.
Shlomo, there's a bunch of questions that were asked ahead of time about using your customs benefits when ordering online. I'm going to put the link to the article, but maybe you want to address it in a minute.
Okay. Basically, thank you, Tiffany. You have 3 opportunities to get something released from customs within 3 years. If you send a 40-foot container, that is one instance of using your customs benefits. So you still have 2 left. If you send a package through Amazon, you can use that as your as one of your customs benefits. You have to determine whether it's worthwhile. How much is the customs tax going to really be? Do you want to use one of your benefits if it's going to cost you $20 to get it out of customs? Probably not. You may want to save it. Natsa, can you just speak for a minute about what you sent me earlier about reimbursement for packages through Amazon?
Sure. Hello, everybody. The Amazon issue is a little bit complicated, and there was actually a question about it once about 5 seconds ago in the chat. Somebody asked, can Nefesh B'Nefesh advocate to the Israeli government to ease some of the taxes on Amazon shipments for new Olim? The complicated answer to that is that you can't really differentiate between the packages that are bought on Amazon or any of the other shipping online ordering sites, and there are many of them. For the most part, there is an exemption to pay the customs tax for anything that is under $75, and that applies to any of the sites. Unfortunately, if it is over that amount, then you do have to pay a customs tax. So often what people will do is, in order to alleviate that, they'll purchase less things in an order Obviously, if you have one item that's larger than $75, that's not really an option. But if there are multiple little items, you can order a couple in one shipment, wait a couple of days, make another shipment order from Amazon, and then you will be able to alleviate some of those taxes. Regarding in general, Amazon works a little bit differently than the rest of the online world. A lot of the online companies allow you to pay whatever their fee is and whatever the price is for the items, but they don't charge you the customs. They let you deal with customs in Israel by yourself. So if your package arrives in Israel, it'll get to the postal service and you will get a notification that you have something waiting for customs to be paid or to show that you're exempt. Regarding Amazon, it's a little bit different. They do a calculation in advance as customs agents of how much you would be charged for the customs in any given country. So in our specific case, Israel, you pay that when you order online. And that way, when you're releasing the package, the customs has already been paid. The issue with that is then you don't have the opportunity to ask for the customs authority to relieve you of the customs tax that you would be charged. So your only option in this case is to just order regularly from Amazon, pay the customs tax through them, and after you receive your package, there is an online form. I'm happy to share the link in a couple of seconds when I find it, in which you can ask for reimbursement on the taxes you paid on your shipment. Obviously, you'll have to use information from the shipment, like the shipping number, the package number, et cetera, but that information can help you and get a reimbursement on the taxes should you decide that the package you ordered from Amazon is worth using one of your shipments from the three in your eligibility.
I just want to add here that $75 threshold, that includes shipping costs. So just be aware of that. It's not just the cost of the item, it's also the shipping costs that can push you over the $75 threshold. So just be aware.
I would also, let me just say one thing about it.
Yeah, go ahead. Sorry, Tiffany.
Just say about Amazon, they come out a lot with deals over $50 free shipping. So it's kind of a game here for some families who like to buy from Amazon. You want to buy between $50 and $75. So you get the free shipping and it doesn't count into the $75, but it can't go over $75 because then you're going to pay customs on it.
Right. On those specific cases, you have to make sure that the item itself says that it falls into the $49 exemption. Just the fact that it ships to Israel isn't enough.
Okay. I also want to add that if you look at the chat box, you'll notice that Sippy has put in a link to an article about getting a package released from customs with your Aliyah benefits. If a package arrives that you have not paid customs on yet, they're asking for customs, there's a whole article on our website with instructions, with a link to the form you need to fill out in order to get it released from customs without paying the customs tax. And again, every time you do this counts towards your 3 opportunities within 3 years. Okay. Tippy, are there any other questions that we can?
So first of all, I'm just going to say that when I will be sending out the follow-up email with the link, and that might take a couple of days, a link to the recording, the links to the articles that were mentioned here will also be sent. I think that we can go on to other questions, other topics. I'm sure there's, okay. There were a bunch of questions about passports, Israeli passports. So if you don't mind, Shlomo, I will just say something about that. Okay. So there's been questions about how do I get my Israeli passport? How do I renew my Israeli passport? There's no appointments available. So first of all, the most important thing to know is that the government has once again extended a while ago the temporary protocol allowing Israeli citizens to travel in and out of Israel using a valid foreign passport if you have one. That's, again, usually you need to travel in and out of Israel using your Israeli passport, but it's been in place for a while now, and it's still in place through the end of June at this point, that you can travel in and out of Israel using your valid foreign passport. If you have an Israeli passport and it expired, you should bring it with you to the airport and to your travels. If you don't have an expired one, i.e. you never got an Israeli passport, please we recommend you bring your Teudat Zehut with you, and obviously you have your foreign passport with you. So I say that, first of all, because you shouldn't feel too pressured, because you can travel through the end of June. If you don't know what the issue is, it's still very, very hard to get an appointment at any of the Miswada Pnim branches. You can get an appointment for July. You can get an appointment for, I think now we're up to July already. But if you need something earlier, it's hard. It's not impossible. We always tell people to keep on checking the My Visit site, especially early in the morning. It's not just appointments that people have canceled. Also, various branches open up appointments for the next day, for the next week. Sometimes you got to have a luck, because they do get taken up quickly. So anybody who doesn't have an Israeli passport, Israeli passport is going to be expiring, I suggest taking a deep breath, because you can travel through June, no problem, and going online now and making an appointment for the first date you find, so that you can you'll be able to then either renew or get your Israeli passport. I hope I covered that issue, okay? That question. Somebody asked, when do we apply for Israeli passports? You can apply anytime after you've been here for 3 months. And again, it's worthwhile to make an appointment, even if it's a number of months off, because you can still travel through the end of June. Okay. I'm looking else. There was questions. People were also asked about Bituach Leumi, and now I'm going to give a plug-in. Okay, we're going to have the same open forum next month on February 21st, Tuesday, February 21st, and the spotlight will be on Bituach Leumi, a general overall view of Bituach Leumi. That being said, it's a huge topic. If you have questions, somebody wrote in, I'm still confused. I need to know what you're confused about. We need to know what exactly are you confused about. If it's general confusion, give us a call, *3680, Sunday through Thursday, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. And one of us can give you a brief explanation, overview of Bituach Leumi. There's a great article on our website about Bituach Leumi, which you should read, because it will give you a nice background, a nice platform to start with, and then you'll maybe know what your questions are. In general, you don't have to worry yet about Bituach Leumi in your first 6 months of Aliyah, and then you'll start paying Bituach Leumi either 6 months or 12 months later. If you're working and get a salary slip, it will be paid directly out of your salary slip. Anybody who is attending this evening and is within their first year of Aliyah, you should be getting periodic emails from us, about 8 throughout the year, which are reminding you of various milestones in your Aliyah first year, including, don't forget to set up a Bituach Leumi direct debit payment or something similar to that. So if you've been here, and you've been here for more than 6 months or 12 months, and you're not yet paying Bituach Leumi, and you didn't get a bill, and you're not working, then you should be in touch with us. Okay, and we'll help you figure that one out.
Okay, Tzipi,
sure.
I would like to have mercy on Lee and answer his question about buying a new car. So basically, the benefit for buying a new car in Israel is, again, you pay 77% tax instead of about 112% tax. What this means for you is that when you look at the sticker price, you should expect to pay about 10 to 12% less than what is listed on the sticker for a new car in Israel. In order to get this benefit, you're going to have to show your Teudat Oleh, your Teudat Zehut, your passport, your driver's license from your country of origin, as well as your new Israeli driver's license. All right? If you're within the first year, you can kind of push off showing the Israeli driver's license, but you're going to have to show the Israeli driver's license within 12 months of Aliyah, or you're going to have to pay back those taxes that you saved when buying a new car. There is no benefit on a used car, because technically you don't pay tax on a used car. You buy a used car based on the price that the person paid for the new car, which includes the taxes. So when you buy a used car, since there's technically no tax, there's technically no benefit for an OLED. There is something called passport to passport, where if an OLED buys a car with their benefits, they can then sell it to another OLED using their benefits without having to pay back the taxes. This not only gets complicated, but the real reason that I'm not going to discuss it is because it's virtually impossible to find a passport to passport car for sale. Hardly anyone sells the car they buy with their OLED benefits, so there's no real marketplace for it. So I couldn't tell you how to find one of these cars. If you do find one of these cars and need help with it, there is an article on our website about buying passport to passport, and we're happy to talk to you about it if you find it. Unfortunately, I have no way of helping you find a passport to passport car, so it's not really worth talking about. You're going to get this benefit.
Shlomo, I would share that over the last about 6 years, I've seen on multiple Olim Facebook groups only about 4 cars being offered passport to passport. So again, I wouldn't go looking for it unless it popped up.
Okay, great. Like I said, there's no practical way of doing it, so it's not really worth discussing this kind of forum. It's important to note that electric and hybrid vehicles have their own tax break already built in that is worth more than the OLED tax break. So you will not be able to get a tax break on an electric or hybrid vehicle, okay? Because, like I said, there's already a tax break built in. Trying to think what else I can tell you about buying a new car. There's really not much else I can tell you. In order to get this benefit, you have to be buying a car that has not been cleared through customs yet, which means that you can't buy a floor model car with this. You can't buy what's called the 0 kilometer used car with this benefit. It has to be a car that is being cleared through customs for you specifically. If you use your benefit to buy a new car or you use your benefit to import a car, only the OLED can drive the car for 4 years, okay? Yes, there are no additional rights for an OLED on a hybrid car. It is important to understand that, okay? Again, because there's already a tax break built in that is greater than the OLED tax break. So you're not allowed to double dip. That's why you don't get rights on a hybrid car. Okay, so as I said before, only the OLED can drive the car. The OLED's immediate family, as long as they live in Israel and have the same address on their Teudat Zehut, should also be able to get permission. The OLED and the spouse can drive the car. You are correct, I'm sorry. But any children or parents can only drive the car if they have the same address on their Teudat Zehut. Someone recently bought a hybrid car and used their OLED benefits. Great. I hope I'm wrong about this. It's possible that they changed something. The green level of the car can also have an influence on this. So not all hybrid cars have the same green level. So the tax break is actually dependent upon the green level of the car. So if it's a green level car that has a lower benefit than the OLED benefit, you still may be able to get the benefit on that. On our website, there is a chart of the different green levels. When you go to the dealership, they'll be able to talk to you about it. But again, that may have been a reason why you were able to get it. Honda CR-V hybrid, great. But that's why it can be, the whole thing with the hybrid and electric cars can get very confusing. It's best to speak to the dealer about it, and the dealer will be able to provide the exact numbers. Okay. Sippy, what other questions are there?
Yeah, so of course the ubiquitous, how do I convert my driver's license, which is why I put the link into the right here into the chat, leading to our article. Well, maybe we can just go. I apologize for coughing in everybody's ears, so I'm going to mute myself again.
I'm going to talk about driver's license conversion in the most general terms that I can, with the understanding that if you still do not understand or you try to do it and you're having an issue, call us. I'd be happy to talk to you about your case specifically over the phone if you're having a problem. So, if the generalities don't cover your specifics, that's fine. Please give us a call and we can talk about your specifics. Basically, it's like this. You have 5 years from your date of Aliyah to convert your driver's license. You have 1 year from your date of entry, not your date of Aliyah, to drive on your foreign license. Your date of entry only resets if you're out of the country for a full 12 months. Okay? So, some of you, if you've been to Israel for a significant amount of time every year for the last 20 years, you may not be able to drive without getting an Israeli driver's license. So you may not have that time that you think you have, and you should do it sooner rather than later. If you have been driving for more than 5 years, if you can prove that you have had a valid license at least 5 years before Aliyah, then you can do what's called the expedited driver's license conversion process. This will mean you will not have to take a lesson or a test. You will still have to fill out forms. You will still have to fill out a health declaration and submit a doctor's letter if you answer yes to any questions on the health questionnaire. You still have to go through all of that, but you won't have to take a lesson and you won't have to take a test, and the process should be fairly quick. If you have not had a license for 5 years, you're going to have to do at least one lesson and a test. If you've had a license for less than 2 years, you're also going to have to take a written test. A driver's permit is not considered a driver's license. So if you've only had a learner's permit, that does not count towards the 2 or 5 years, and you cannot convert that. You cannot convert a license that you did not have before Aliyah. There are circumstances where that can change. If you find yourself in that situation, give us a call. We can talk about it. But in general, you cannot convert a license that you got after Aliyah. That's the basics of driver's license conversion. In the article, it gives you step-by-step instructions on exactly how to do it. If there's a step you don't understand, if there's something that you tried based on the steps that doesn't work, please call us and let us know, and we can talk you through it and usually help you figure it out. All right. Tippy, any other questions? You're muted, Tippy.
How long do we have after Aliyah for the Ulpan benefit, which is a good thing to just
Okay,
say.
I believe the Ulpan benefit is 5 years now, or did they? It's 10 years now.
It's extended. It's been extended for the past number of years.
You're muted again.
To 10 years. 10 years,
okay.
Still.
All right, so you have 10 years to use your Ulpan benefit. So yes, that is how long you have to use the Ulpan benefit. All right, what else? Any other questions that we can take that are relevant to the group? I see there was a question about packages, about customs on packages through Amazon. I think we discussed that pretty much at length. If you didn't get it, when you get the recording, it's something that we talked about in pretty great detail.
So somebody just wrote in, going back to the passport a second, if you leave on your foreign passport in June, is there an issue returning to Israel with the foreign passport after June?
No.
Yeah, there isn't. You're an Israeli citizen. They'll let you back in. If there's a question, you'll explain to them. You know, we don't know. This might be extended more. Again, we don't know, but there will not be a problem for you to return.
Okay. It is possible that someone just posted that all my friends got 2 years of Ulpan. It is possible to get 2 Ulpanim paid for, depending on, budgets and things like that. It's not guaranteed. If you take one Ulpan and you feel you want another, speak to Misrad HaKlita and see about the possibility of getting another one. Sometimes it's granted, sometimes it's not. It does have to do with budgeting and other things. So it is possible, but it's not guaranteed.
And I just want to what Nata just wrote in. It is true that the actual directive is 18 months. You have 18 months for the Ulpan, but there's been a temporary directive that's been renewed over the past number of years, quite a few years, that extends it to 10 years. It hasn't been renewed yet in 2023 because I guess we're still waiting for a lot of things to be renewed by a lot of different government offices. There's no reason to wait 10 years to take the Ulpan. You should do it at the beginning in any case, because they might stop extending it, but also it's important to learn Hebrew.
Yeah. These things do change. You know, when we talk about 10 years out, The governments change, the laws change, the rules change. So I can tell you right now what the laws are or what we expect them to be. But ultimately, the longer you wait, the more there's a chance that something could change, hopefully to your benefit, but also sometimes, unfortunately, not. Anything else? I saw someone posted about benefits for buying a home. Do you want me to talk about mortgages and purchase tax benefit for a moment? Okay, this is going to get complicated. We're going to get into a lot of numbers. I hope you're all not too punch drunk from what we've already talked about up until now, but let's talk about benefits for buying a home. There are two benefits. I was about to say there are two major benefits. Unfortunately, neither one of them I would really classify as major. They are mortgage benefit and purchase tax benefit. The purchase tax benefit sounds good until you realize what you're comparing it to. Basically, when you're paying purchase tax, there are three potential purchase tax rates that you could pay. There's the Aliyah rate, which is between 0.5 and 5%. So shekel 1 starts at being taxed at 0.5%, up until, I believe, shekel 1.7 million or something like that. And then from there, it goes to 3.5%, from shekel 1.7 to I think it's 2.5, and then it goes to 5% after that. Someone buying the only home that they own in Israel can have a rate starting at 0% and going to a maximum of 10%. What you might have noticed from that is that at the low end, you're probably better off using the primary home buyer rate, the non-Aliyah rate, the one for someone who's buying their only property in Israel. But at the higher end, you're probably better off using the Aliyah rate. In case you're curious, the switchover amount is about 4.5 million shekel. Your lawyer can help you figure out which tax rate is going to be more beneficial to you and whether it's worth using the Aliyah benefit or not. The third rate is someone buying their second property in Israel, which starts at 5% and goes to a maximum of 10%. So if you're buying a second property, it's almost always worth using your Aliyah benefit on this. But for a first property, it may or may not be. Just something to keep in mind. I believe you have 15 years to use that benefit. The second benefit is the mortgage benefit. And what that is that a portion of the mortgage, usually up to about 100.
Shlomo, I just want to correct, the purchase tax is 10-year, the mortgage is 15.
I'm sorry. Okay, so the purchase tax 10-year benefit, the mortgage benefit is 15. I always get those mixed up. I apologize for that. The mortgage benefit is that a portion of the mortgage, usually about 150,000 shekel, can be at a lower rate, usually about 3%. I'm using those amounts, and usually because when you apply for this benefit, you're going to be filling out a questionnaire as part of the application process. And based on your answers, those amounts can change. How long you've been in Israel, how many family members, did you do army service, are you on active miluim, does anyone have a disability? Those are all things that you're going to be filling out, and then, only then will you find out what the actual mortgage benefit for the Aliyah is going to be. Usually, like I said, it's about 150,000 shekel, about 3%. It costs about 60 shekel to apply for this benefit. You would do it through the bank or mortgage broker that you're using. And that's what it is. So is that a huge benefit? No, but there is a big aspect to that benefit in that that portion of the mortgage is guaranteed by the government. So if you are kind of a borderline case to get a mortgage, the bank will be more inclined to give you a mortgage if you're using the government, the Aliyah mortgage. Okay? All right. Tiffy, any other questions?
I think, well, we can ask people if they have any other questions to type in. I think we've about covered all the various questions that were written in ahead of time. And I'm scrolling up from the top here to see if we missed anything, but it's
okay. While Tiffy is doing that, I want to add something here. We've mentioned the star 3680 number multiple times and the answers at nbn.org.il email address. It's very important that you understand that if you have a question or something's going wrong or you're running into a challenge, we have no way of knowing unless you tell us. We want to help you. We want to make sure that we're able to help you with whatever challenges arise, but we have no way of knowing about them unless you call us and ask us the question. I always like to tell people that I'd much rather answer a question than deal with a problem that arises because you didn't ask me the question. So if you're not sure about whether you have a question, call or email us and let's find out. And usually that enables us to help you much better. Okay. Anything else?
I can leave you with one very specific question somebody wrote, and apologies if you answered it. How are musical instruments viewed? What about tools and power tools? This is for sending in a shipment.
Okay, so let's take those two separate things. Musical instruments are usually considered household goods. If you're shipping a Stradivarius, I would certainly speak to customs before doing that. But if we're talking about just your guitar or your piano, it shouldn't be an issue. Shipping a piano or a guitar, that's something you want to make sure that you're speaking to your importer, because those can oftentimes, those are very often sensitive to being shipped. So particularly pianos, they don't react well to salt water and sea air. So you have to make sure that your shipper knows what they're doing when it comes to shipping any kind of musical instrument like that. When we talk about power tools, it gets a little more complicated, because even if you're not using them for professional purposes, sometimes tools are professional grade. And the customs benefit, the OLED benefit, only applies to personal items. And a power tool can very easily be, customs can very easily say, no, this is a professional tool, even if you don't use it professionally. If you're not sure, the email that we put in earlier, the YIM at taxes, that's a great way to find out whether or not customs will consider that that particular power tool as something that is for personal use and is covered under the Aliyah benefit, or is not. And that can get a little bit complicated. And beyond my expertise, my knowledge of power tools is basically, I know how to plug it in and hand it to my son to use. Beyond that, I can't really speak about power tools, but you can speak to customs. When we talk about personal wheelchairs, motorized wheelchairs, do you want to talk about that, or do you want to just say that if you're importing something like that, contact us directly?
Yes, I think if you're importing something like that, contact us directly, because it's relevant probably to 1% of the people here, and we're happy to have a conversation about it separately. It is quite detailed. I will share that other items that are not wheelchairs but have large batteries and are electric, such as electric scooters, hoverboards, those kinds of things cannot be imported. Golf cart is separate as well. So again, if that's something you want to bring in, speak to us. It's a little bit detailed, but the other smaller items are not allowed to be imported, even though somewhere in the regulation it says it can be.
Okay. So again, if this is something that's relevant to you, again, we're not going to get into it here, but call us and we can have a conversation, a more detailed conversation one-on-one. Okay. Anything else? We're running right around the time frame where we wanted to be for ending this. So I'm going to give one last chance for a question to come in. And Tippy, if there's anything else? Otherwise, at 8:20, we're gonna close it down if nothing dramatic happens before that.
Okay, I just want to add, I'm sure, and if you see these 2 pages of questions that were written in ahead of time, and I kind of put them into groups, and I'm sure there's questions we didn't get to. So I'm going to remind you again, star 3680, Sunday through Thursday, as we've been saying, 9 a.m. to 3 p.m. We're there past 3 p.m. We just use the time after that to try and get the answers to the many questions we receive, or send us an email and we will try and answer you as quickly as possible. There is one question: are personal silver items taxed?
Again, if we're talking about silverware, we're talking about your menorah, your esrog box. No, I wouldn't expect them to be. If we get into talking about silver coins, silver bars, then we can get a little bit more complicated, and that's time to have a conversation. But basically, when we're talking about anything with a monetary value, are we talking about an item, or are we talking about a currency, a trade good? Okay, it's a difference between a diamond ring and a diamond. I hope that that's clear. Okay, I see that there are some questions about things that we went over that we already discussed. Again, call us. I'm happy to discuss it with you and really go through it with you. The nature of this sort of thing is that I can't answer your specific questions. What I can do is give you the background so that you can ask us better questions. And that's what I really want from this. I hope that this sparked more questions that you're going to call us to have a better conversation about. I think that's really what we're looking from here. What we're looking for from this. Obviously, no one here is going to get off of this webinar and be an expert in sending a shipment to Israel. But if you call us, we can have a longer conversation and hopefully get your specific situation in order. Thank you very much, everybody. On behalf of Tzipi and Natsa, I want to thank you all for joining us tonight. I hope that this was as interesting for you as it was for me. And I hope that we hear from all of you very, very soon. Have a great night, everybody.
Thank you, Shlomo.
Thank you, everybody, for joining.